Mason Suehs, welcome to Unbroken.
You. Happy to be here.
Great. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how you discovered the three principles?
Sure. Um, I discovered the three principles when I was incarcerated 6 years ago now. Anna Debenham, leader of the Insight Alliance or founder, she came into prison. It's my second time in prison, and I was in for drug offenses. And man, it shook my world. I mean, it like I had been searching my whole life for it's just like what's the answer, looking at all the billion of things out there and trying to solve my inner struggles and my inner challenges, and then turning towards drugs, getting deeply into addiction, and then making not the greatest decisions. um yeah, and when I took this class, I had previously been involved in like tons of meditation, and I even was like sober for 7 years between my two prison sets. Got a degree in public health, but I was still felt like life was such a challenge. It was like I was still always looking for a way to try to feel different and feel better. Always looking for the next thing, the next self-help book, the next like how do I escape this challenging experience? And then when the three principles, when Anna came in, like, I mean, it just started. Like, you're not broken. You actually don't need to do all that to fix anything. You're fixing an imaginary self. Like, and it just, I mean, there's so many insights. And it really just helped me become like a better flower, a better surfer, a better mover through life. And I realized there's so much less for me to do than I thought there was. And that my natural capacity, like who I was actually amazing. Like,
Mm,
have incredibleness. And if I let my hands off of it and I saw the nature of where my experience was really coming from, I'd elevate. And man, it's just been a journey these last 5 or 6 years.
yeah.
It's been a fun one.
And when you took that class was it with Anna herself?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was.
And I'm just curious, are they mandatory or is it voluntary when you sign up?
No, yeah, it was. I had a couple friends who were take because you repeat right after 10 weeks, go to another one. They're like, you've got to take this class.
Mm,
Like, okay, I'll do it. And it was all voluntary. I'm actually in teaching these classes now at the
no.
same institution.
Yeah.
Um, and you sign up, and I did it with some good friends, and it's amazing now too. Like, I know many people, I'm still in contact with people from that class, and they're doing incredible 6 years
Wow.
later. Like
Yeah.
every person I was close to in there is doing amazing.
Wow. Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah.
It's like the recidivism rate is like 60% within like 3 years or 50 something. And the fact that like I know like six people from that class are excelling.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how everyone else is doing, but that's pretty good numbers right there.
Yes. Yeah. So just in the general population, the recidivism rate is between 50 and 60%. Yeah.
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 Sometimes even higher than 60%.
I bet. Yeah. Wow. Wow. Um, and so one of the things you mentioned in your bio at the Inside Alliance website is struggling with anxiety, severe anxiety. That was one of the things you mentioned. Um, so what do you see now about what anxiety actually is?
Right. My creative potential, I guess. Like the amazingness of my mind. Um, I I mean, that was my lifelong struggle. Like my intense, like I got to the point periods where I couldn't even leave the house to get a haircut. It was I've been on like 30 different, maybe more than 30 different medications. And always looking for, like, always analyzing, like, how am I feeling? Oh, then that means something about me. And I go into myself, and, oh, I'm feeling anxious about that. Oh, and then I get up to thinking a lot about it, and I feel it in my body. And I just thought, I'm an anxious person. That's how I was born. That's who I am. That's at the core, like my essence. And I mean, when I first heard, like in our class, we like, you're not broken, you don't need fixing. Like that rang so true. And then when we went into how is our experience being created, like not even like judging it or like needing to fix it or anything, but no, just what is happening in our mind for us to experience reality. And I don't even know what really switched. I just know there was so many insights of seeing myself do things and seeing myself do things that weren't helpful,
Mm.
and just getting more space in my head and getting more awareness about how I'm navigating and what I'm taking seriously and what I'm making up stories about. And it's just like this, it's like fat melting away off of really well cooked something, right? It just like kind of slid away. And and then all of a sudden life became a little easier, and I started to see, oh, I'm not only am I creating, and it not only is life creating my reality through me, but then I was responding to that creation. I was really responding and thinking, oh, I'm going to resist this. I need to change this. I need to manage this. What can I do to feel, I was looking in the wrong direction,
Mhm.
like really the wrong direction.
Mhm.
And then when I saw it, it stopped making sense to do that.
Mhm.
And so, what is anxiety, right? I don't know. It's like an experience of humans, we're going to experience it, right? And I don't defeat it as much. I don't defeat it at all. And I can experience, I maybe can be a little anxious about something and then also have a peace inside at the same time. And I can be the awareness of that and like, oh, this means nothing about me.
Mhm.
Don't have to go fix it. I don't have to go manage my outside world. I can just be okay. And if I have an insight about something to do that might help a situation, I do it.
Mhm.
But there's a journey of settling in, I guess. Um, of seeing my anxiety for what it was. Because I mean, I am definitely not an anxious person today.
Mm.
I am not an anxious person. I have anxious thoughts on occasion,
Mhm.
but they're in my heart. I know without a doubt that that is not what or who I am.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it strikes me to ask, when you're teaching a class to a group of people who have kind of run their lives off the rails in a way, and they've ended up incarcerated, starting by telling them they're not broken is such an interesting place to begin. And I'm curious about how do you do that?
Right? We do it from just putting out the basics of our class. We're like, not broken, you don't need fixing. And our experience and our reality is being created from the inside out, that life is flowing through us. It's not coming at us. And we do some exercises in some ways. And we also say, like, look, we're not like, we're going to explore these concepts for the next 10 weeks.
Mhm.
We're just going to have an exploration. We're not here to teach you anything. We're just here to remind you or to point you in a direction for you to see for yourself. That's it, because we can't. We're not the experts. It's just pointing at it.
Mhm.
And there's a pretty high retention in the
Mhm.
classes, and there's some people who drop out, right?
Yeah.
We had one, Anna had one right before my class where the person was like, just like, no, this isn't right. And so like really upset. And it's like not really like extremely, I mean, we just get attached to our ideas and and we can feel attacked when and this person left class. A week later, they came back and like, I'm sorry. Like I had a like, and then they were like one of the most, interactive participants. And sometimes people just, it's not for them.
Yeah.
But I would say at least 85% are like, I'm doing this.
Cool. Yeah. Oh, that's so great. Yeah, because I can imagine it can be quite confronting for someone, who's there. They're um in a situation they don't necessarily want to be in. It's not in their control. They're in this place where everything is sort of regulated for them and they can't leave. And then for someone to say to them, actually, you know what, you're totally fine. You're not broken. It could be a little confronting. I can see that. But I also see that because it's true, that it would catch light with people.
Right. I mean, we're in prison. Everyone says we're broken.
Yeah.
Everyone says that we're wrong. And I think we're also really like careful to say, look, we're not blaming. Like it's just like it's not our fault, and our trauma is feels real to us, and it's something we're bringing forward, and it's not an attack on who we are. But sometimes we hold on to our trauma and our thoughts, and we just think they become a definition of our experience. And so, especially if people like kind of aren't seeing it, and they're like, like, well, like just stick with us and have a conversation,
Hmm.
and then you'll see over the weeks people will start to open up, or they'll just get a little confused, you know? Like they'll be like, yeah, I don't know what to say. I'm just confused, and you're like, oh, that's cool. Like
Yeah.
something's mixing up there. It's like a little milkshake, being swirled around. It's like, okay, let's see what comes out of it. And so um and you can see a light. You can see a light turning on in people. Like you can see them. I mean, like for me, I found my freedom in prison. Straight up. Like I found it 100%. I was so like I'm like I could be here forever and be all right. Like honestly, I didn't really like
Mm.
I had no desire or need for things to change in the situation, right? And sometimes it can be a really hard experience for people because of situations, everything in it. And there's a possibility in that
Hmm.
to see that, like, I'm not going to get happiness through my external circumstances. I'm not going to get satisfaction through that.
Hmm.
That's definitely an illusion. And
Hmm.
sometimes being in prison, you can see it a little bit clearer because you can recognize I still experience happiness and joy in this space. And so I feel like it's the best space to actually bring this understanding because people tend to be more receptive.
Wow. Yeah. And you're so right. There someone is in almost the worst of circumstances, and yet they can experience peace and happiness and joy. So that must be so impactful. It was for you, obviously.
Right. Yeah. It's just it's amazing what we're all capable of,
Yeah.
and it's amazing how elusive this experience is, how much we stick in that misunderstanding innocently. Like it's just like it I'm just constantly amazed at this creation of reality and our experience as we move
Mm.
through life. Like it's and always the possibility to see more too. Like and like 6 years into it, it's like I'll see something today. I'm like, oh, wow, I did not see that before. Like what? It's like, wow, that feels like a deepening,
Yeah.
or that feels calmer. And then all of a sudden I may have something else falls away.
Hmm. Yeah. Wow. I love that. Um, and so one of the things I wanted to touch on was you mentioned at the top of the show that you had had this 7-year period, in between two bouts of being in prison, um, and then I guess fell back into the drugs habit. And so, with this understanding, what do you see different now about falling back into old habits?
Yeah. Still have habits. I'm on my
Okay.
phone way too much. I'm on my phone way too. I'm like, hold on, but not really. I love it. It's fine, but it's also I'm just aware of it, right?
Yeah.
I think I think for me with addiction and drugs, I really thought I was an addict. I'll be an addict for life.
Mm,
That was what it was told. I was in all these many programs um, for addiction, and then also I was really successful in my life at the time, doing everything right. And then I had some challenges come up and I started getting in my thoughts. And I started believing what I was thinking and I started rationalizing things. And I started just kind of going down certain paths. And then I started using. And the second I used, I'm like, well, I'm an addict. That's what I'm going to do.
hmm
I can't stop now. I need to just continue doing this. And it's like, that's just who I am, my justification, right?
hmm
And then I'm like, well, at least I'm gonna be successful at it in this way. And then I started selling and doing not great things at all. And then I just, even after a degree, even after great jobs, like I just got stuck in this world of experience that I thought was real. And I thought made, at the time, it made sense to me. Now I can't fathom, right?
Yeah.
Really made sense. And I know today, like, I take my, I mean, I don't have really bad habits anymore, unless phone put them, but it's like, there's a lot less to do with my habits, so much less, and just that amazing awareness around it. And when I see them for what they are, their habits of thinking,
hmm
their habits of stuff I've brought from wherever, doesn't really matter. And if I see it, I see it, I'll let it go. But habits of thinking that just are what I'm experiencing. It's the grist, it's my mill churning things and me moving through things. And I
hmm
can just like, oh, this is just what it is. And I can hold it with love, hold it with compassion, and recognize with that awareness, these things will move on.
hmm
And I don't have to buy into my thinking of sickness, of I'm always going to be drawn to this, or that I'm at the I have like I have no control. Like, and the thing is, like, this is I really don't like, we can't control what thoughts come in, and we don't have to respond to them.
hmm
I I guess there's just a much a sense of ease around stuff.
hmm
Like, and if I ever am in a low space, a low state of mind, I just know not to trust my thinking. Like, I know that I don't have to look to feel better. I don't have to look outside myself.
hmm
Really, like, that's not gonna work. I mean, how many times have I used drugs and then not felt better? But it's that habit, that connection that's like, this will make you feel better. This will do this. Let's look outside yourself, or let's go find this self-help book. And maybe, but like, it's like I can at least have some awareness around, like, I can do this, but I don't have to put my well-being onto it. And not the drugs, but like even my like even working out or something. Like, that's not gonna make me more. I
hmm
might generally have an elevated experience, and my well-being, I could be okay if I don't work out, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And it was that constant searching to feel different, to try to fix a feeling.
hmm
That's all I did in my addiction. And I
hmm
really thought my feelings were affected and changed by the substances I used or the situations I was in.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's such an important point that anytime we're addicted or have an unwanted habit, that we do that because it looks like a solution.
Right.
And it turns out we're looking in the wrong direction, but we're never I always say there's no such thing as self-sabotage. We're always trying to do the best we can with what we know at the time.
And it's so funny, like habits, addiction, there's such a, with more awareness, like we naturally change and evolve, like we evolve. We're made to have insights and change, but we don't always get to choose when those come. We don't get to choose like when we're gonna see more. It's just that openness and awareness. And when we see at least how the mechanisms are doing it, it gives us that space to then have the possibility of misdirecting, changing, moving a different way, or habits might fall away.
Hmm.
Even like 8 months ago, I I was out. I wasn't eating very healthy at all. I was like 20 pounds more, and I was fine. I was perfectly fine, and I wasn't exercising. But then I was like, let me get curious about this. It's just like I'm not gonna stress about it. I'm just gonna have a okay, like it's interesting. And then naturally what developed is now it's like I'm working out like 3 times, 4 times a week just because I enjoy it and I feel good, but I'm eating incredibly healthy. But I'm not like, oh, how do I manage this? How do I manage this? How do I manage this? It's like it just came, it just arose and over time and it morphed and it modified. But there's such an ease in developing new habits when we don't have as much on it. We
Yeah.
don't think we actually have to control it. And there's also an ease in habits falling away when we're not judging ourselves and putting ourselves down and tearing us and making ourselves feel better. Like, oh, why did I do that? And we go into shame and then we go back to feeling terrible and then we do an action again. Like, oh yeah, this is a cool cycle. you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you mentioned a little bit earlier about identity, how you identified yourself as an addict and drew the conclusion that that's just what you're going to do. And I think that's such an important thing to bring up because in this understanding that we don't identify ourselves based on the habit, and so something just struck me. I don't know if I'm going to have the words to talk about it, but that in kind of the old model of dealing with unwanted habits and addictions, it almost reinforces what we're trying to get rid of. It drives us back toward doing the thing because of maybe identifying with it and seeing it as a problem as well. Whereas when we look in this direction, we're looking elsewhere. We're looking towards our wholeness and seeing that the habit is just there and it can fall away, like you said a few minutes ago. Yeah, so that just struck me. I think it's an
Right,
important clarification.
right. It's like not a punitive,
Got a what?
it's
Sorry.
not a punitive.
Oh,
Like
yeah, not punitive. Yeah.
like like let's tear you down. I mean, some people find strength in that in their own way, right? But it's also doesn't feel effective to me. It doesn't feel good either.
No.
And it also doesn't tend to work for other habits. The little habits, like it just actually like so like does it really work for these other really supposedly big ones? Like hold on.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. Um, and so you're now teaching with the Inside Alliance, which is so great. And what was that progression like for you from someone who was incarcerated to now teaching the principles?
I got out 6 years ago and I just stayed volunteered, did
Mm,
multiple 10-week courses with Anna. I did like 8 or 9 of them.
wow.
And then 2 years and 1 month ago, they were hiring their third person at the time. And so I just applied because I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. I just knew it in my heart. Um, and I got it. It was super amazing. Now we're at like 11 people and we do
Oh,
case management. So we support people coming out of prison, full wraparound services.
nice.
Um, and we have now we're in a lot of we're looking like we're going to be doing drug court. we're working with D-Start, which is a federal program. Instead of going to prison, they're coming to our program, and we're
Mm,
back in the prisons.
wow.
And my journey, I mean, it's been a journey learning this process of teaching. A lot of some insecure thoughts, so I'm like, but it's like at least I knew what they were. I don't have to take myself so seriously. And ooh, will I ever be able to do this?
Yeah. Yeah.
And but it's been amazing. It's been an incredible journey of just like seeing myself more
Mm,
and seeing other people more.
hmm.
Feel really grateful I'm able to like be part of this organization and do what I do because it's really about self-development, which then it can like share what we have
Mm,
and then being curious and interested in just about other people,
yeah.
having love and compassion for other people and seeing them for their true selves.
Mhm. And I imagine it's so impactful for the participants in the course to have someone who has been where they are, to be able to show them the way.
Yeah, it is. I mean, Anna was pretty impactful, and like I was amazing, right? And you're right, there is a connection with some people that maybe wouldn't have stayed around.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, it is really cool. They like to hear like, yeah, when I was here 6 years ago, they're like, you were here? I'm like, yeah, I was here a second time. Um, it's definitely huge.
Yeah.
I do have to say too, like, it's cool seeing. I know I mentioned this earlier. I mean, this last class I had, this people are like, I am moving through life better than I've ever moved through life.
Hmm.
One person in our last class, he had this problem of always needing to steal. He'd go into the line whenever there's cinnamon rolls, because that's the big thing, right? And he'd go in line the second time and always get caught, get put on like a green shirt or whatever. He's like, I just can't help myself. I just do it. And then one of the last classes, and he had a lot of thoughts around a lot, but we saw him quiet down as the weeks went on. And then he was like in what ninth or 10th class, he's like, you know, we had cinnamon rolls. And I went and get in line for a second cinnamon roll. And I'm like, I don't need a second cinnamon roll. Why am I even doing this? He's like, and I got out of line. He's like, I can't like what happened? And from that, he's like, what I realized is that I never need to come back here. And like just from a cinnamon roll and have such a deep, he's like, I don't have to follow that. I just don't.
Yeah.
And I mean, he loved the cinnamon rolls. But it was just like, so it was just like, wow, that's such a simple little thing. He just saw something really deep for himself. And he saw the agency in his life and where his experience was coming from. And he able to listen to his wisdom. And who knows? But it was just cool to hear.
That is so amazing. Yeah, the wisdom in a cinnamon roll. That's awesome. Yeah. Oh, that's so great.
And like there's so many more like stories. That's just kind of a funny little one because you think, oh, a cinnamon roll, but no, it's like these little things never know what insights they can lead to. And they
Well,
don't
yeah,
need to be big.
no, that's the thing. When we see the nature of thought and how it works, it can be that from the tiniest thing to the biggest thing, it's always the same source. Yeah. Wow. Very powerful. And so, about how many participants do you have in a class at a time? I'm just curious.
15 to 20.
Okay. Yeah. And you said it's 10 weeks.
Yeah, and then we do have participants that take it a second time. So I think
Hmm.
like five of them are retaking it. I mean, it's nice. The second time around they see different things.
Yeah.
And then at the women's, I know it's gonna probably be 20. because we're starting the women's prison here, and they're really excited.
Mm,
Um, because they had it years ago when Anna went in there, and so we couldn't get back in, COVID and complications. But
mm,
yeah, at least 20 in the women's classes.
mm,
Um, and then the youth is a little bit smaller. We probably have like 10 in each one, but that's because they're separated by units.
mm. So, oh, sorry, say more about that. So, is it a different prison for younger
Yeah,
people? Mm,
yeah, we have the McLaren, the youth, which we've been doing. We do a lot virtual. That they're kind of the exception. They can do some virtual Zoom.
okay.
Person's just better for paying attention. But they have different units and they don't like to mix them. So then we go in on Wednesdays and do a morning class and an afternoon class with the youth there.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
And different prisons. It's like anywhere from like 14 to 25. The youth they have to go to adult prison when they turn 25. But
Got it. Yeah. Okay. Well, this has been lovely, Mason. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you'd like to share with our listeners today?
I just want to say thank you for
Mm.
having me on. It's been a pleasure, and it's just so fun to even talk about this. And thanks for wanting to hear my journey. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. My pleasure. Thanks for being here. I'm loving this. And so tell our listeners where they can find out more about you and about the Inside Alliance.
Theinsightalliance.org.
Okay,
Theinsightalliance.org. Should have all our contact on there, emails, reach outs, pretty much the go-to, and some videos and resources as well. So
great. Okay, so I will put a link in the show notes at unbrokenpodcast.com
awesome.
to that so people can find it. Well, thanks again so much, Mason, for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye bye.